The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Welcome to Moments of Strength. I'm your host, Mary Kaufman. In this show, we celebrate the incredible resilience of mothers showing up through life's challenges, growing through every triumph, and carving out space for their own passions and identity. We're here to uplift and reassure every mom that you're not alone and asking for help is a powerful strength. Each episode brings a story of motherhood's beautiful chaos. I'm happy you can join us for today's inspiring journey. And today's guest is Sarah. Sarah, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited we can finally work this out.
Yes.
Crazy schedules. So,
yeah, definitely.
yeah, so I'm happy you're here. We actually met at an empowerment conference for women that you helped organize.
Yes, one of my many hats I wear.
Yeah, and so many. Because after that conference, when I wanted to get a hold of you to see, you're very busy. I mean, you've got a lot going on. So
I like to say my cup is full, my calendar is full. I don't like to call myself busy because it's all stuff I enjoy doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, especially to be at a place in your life where you can say that is so good.
Yes.
So I'm happy to have you. On this show, we just try to provide support and reassurance to moms and help uplift them in their journey through stories of life experiences of other moms. So really the format is we'll talk a little bit about, your background as much as you want to share growing up so we can make some connections to the paths you took later. And then your journey to and through motherhood and how you balance all of those things that you enjoy doing.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, if we're beginning back in the beginning,
yes.
I had a very, non-traditional childhood.
Okay.
I grew up what others would call kind of a rough upbringing. My father actually was arrested when I was 6 years old.
Oh my goodness.
My mom was with him for almost 20 years, married him when she was 16, and had 6 kids with him. She dropped out of high school and raised us 6 kids. And so when he got arrested, and then subsequently they filed for divorce, and a divorce ensued, she was kind of stuck, or felt stuck.
Yes, for sure.
Raising us 6 kids on her own without even a high school diploma. So I like to attribute a lot of my drive and perseverance to her because I watched her figure out a way to do it. She went back to school and got her GED while raising us kids. And granted, we did a lot of raising each other and helping each other out. I raised my little brother, and helped him on his path. Whether that was good or bad, I don't know, to be determined. But it was a tough journey. There were days that, food was scarce and things were hard, but we made it through.
And you were the 5th out of 6?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I was, so there's 5 girls, 1 boy.
Oh my goodness.
I was the last girl.
Okay.
And then the boy, it was the youngest. My dad always wanted a boy, so they kept trying until a boy was born.
My gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So, welcome to life.
Yeah, right.
That's a lot right out of the gate.
Yeah.
But, man, applaud your mom for doing all of that with 6 kids.
Yeah.
Especially starting so young as a mom, too, and then being able to find your way with all of these people you're responsible for. So.
Yeah.
So you went to school, obviously. Did you play sports or do extracurricular activities? Or
I was the overachiever in the family. That's how I got the attention, right? When you have 6 kids, you either act out or you are the parent's favorite, which there can only be one favorite,
Yes.
or you do something really good to get attention. And so I was the overachiever trying to do everything really well to get, a pat on the back here and there.
Yes.
And that's nothing against my mom or when my dad was around, against him either. It was just the way it had to be when there's that many of us fighting for attention. And so I excelled in school. I actually graduated high school in 3 years instead of 4 because I took high school classes in middle school and just had enough credits and I wanted out. And the plan was originally military, but God had a different plan for me.
Okay.
And so while in school, I was in cheerleading. I was captain of the cheerleading squad, sophomore and junior year. I also did a bunch of other, international club and French club and all of these little clubs they have in school that really don't do much for you other than teach you some leadership skills.
And a place to belong and have something to do.
Yeah, but the main extracurricular I was in was in cheerleading. In elementary school and middle school, I played basketball, but I peaked in height-wise then. So 5th grade, 6th grade, I was one of the tallest girls, and then everyone else grew, and I stopped growing. So I came back in 7th grade, and everyone else was way taller than me, and I was like, I don't think basketball is for me anymore.
A short career.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so extracurriculars, and then so you finished in 3 years, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then where did you go?
So, like I said, the plan was military. I was enlisted Air Force. I was ready to go, and when I was 17, so shortly before I graduated high school, I met a man that I loved very dearly, and I moved out of my mom's house when I was 17. As soon as I graduated high school, I moved out. I moved in with him. We had, a young love. It wasn't the perfect relationship, but overall, he's a great guy. And 10 days before I was supposed to leave for boot camp, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh my, 10 days.
Yes. So my recruiter was not happy with me. She basically said, well, are you keeping it? And I was like, well, yeah. I don't know what else to tell you. Yes, I am. And she was like, okay, well, then you can't leave for boot camp. And I was like, okay, then what's the plan? And she was like, well, I don't know. It's not my life.
That's where her responsibility stopped.
Yeah.
Like the military stuff.
And she was like, technically, you would belong to the delayed entry program in the military is what it's called until you're 28 or until you get married. If you get married, then there's the parental responsibility is shared. But in at least the Air Force, I believe the Navy, and I know the Marines, if you are a female and you have a child, if you don't sign over your parental rights, you have to be married in order to be enlisted active duty.
Oh, okay.
And so, at least at that time, it may have changed now. I don't know. That was a long time ago.
Sure.
And so I didn't want to sign over my parental rights, and I did not want to get married at 18, 19 years old. So I remained in the delayed entry program, which basically just meant you were on call until one of those two things happened, but neither of those happened by the time I was 28. So I was just kind of like written off. It was never discharged per se, but they basically said, you didn't meet the requirements, that's it.
Sure.
Yeah, so
what was, can I ask this, what was the draw to go into the military? They recruit, like you showed up at a recruiting thing?
So,
or
the Air Force showed up at my school. Well, obviously, they all show up at all the high schools. They do all the recruiting stuff at the high schools. The Marines showed up, the Air Force showed up, Army showed up, all of that. And I looked at the recruiters, and the only female was the Air Force recruiter.
Gotcha.
And I was like, okay. And then I was like, I kind of like her. Like, she kind of looks like me even. And she had blonde hair and this big bun on the top of her head. And I was like, oh, she kind of looks like she could be my sister or something.
Yeah.
And so I went and met with her, and there was just like this immediate connection, almost like a sisterly connection. And although I grew up with 4 older sisters, they were very involved in their own life. And so I did feel kind of alone and like I didn't have a good role model. And so she kind of became that for me. And so I was just like, okay, well, military equals free school. It equals free travel, which was a big appeal
draw.
to me.
Yeah.
And it equals, getting to to get away from Wisconsin, which at the time I wanted to do.
Sure.
And so I was like, I'm in, let's do it. My mom cried. She did not want me to do it.
That's hard, you know. You could be split on that too. You could be proud and happy, and also you want your child to be by you. So
yeah. So I enlisted, and that was the plan. It was, you know, I was going to go save people and help people. And I should add, it was shortly after 9/11 that my draw to the military like kind of developed, because I was a paper delivery girl when 9/11 happened. And I remember having to wait for, it's kind of a side tangent, but having to wait for the new newspapers to be printed because of 9/11 happening, and then being delivered to the house, and then me and my best friend at the time having to draw on our paper route and just talking about it the whole time. And like, how do we stop something like this from happening again? Like, what can we do to make a difference? And as my brain developed and I got older, I was like, I think this could be a way I could do it, you know? Not that one person can change the world, but maybe I can make a little bit of a difference somehow.
It's all you can do.
You
know, with what you have at your disposal where you are.
So.
Yeah, that's good. That's an interesting story. I was just wondering what drew you there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, so obviously, you know, I'm freshly 18 and find out I'm pregnant, young mom. Everybody has their own opinion about that, but to me, it was one of the greatest gifts I could have gotten. And that's, you know, that was my path to motherhood very early. She was born on Thanksgiving morning. So she's my little
thanks right away.
Turkey baby. And I love her dearly. She is God's gift to me. I have since married someone, not her father, although he and I have a great relationship, and I have 2 stepchildren with him as well. So we're a blended family. They're all older, so I am in my youngish years with older children, and that has its perks. But that was kind of the path and the journey to motherhood. But it was difficult trying to figure out what was my next step while being pregnant, and thought military was going to be my life.
Right.
Like, where do I go from here, kind of thing.
Yeah. So what did you do?
It was kind of naive thinking, but at the time I was like, well, what's like the military? Like, what can I do that's similar to that? I was like, I'm going to be a police officer. That's what I'm going to do. You still get to play with guns. You still get to help people. You still get to do all of that. And so I enrolled in school at Waukesha County Technical College for criminal justice, or some call it criminal justice, some call it criminology, same thing though. And I went to school there. Night school while working during the day, while raising my daughter. And her father was a mechanic, so he ran his own business. So we kind of juggled all of these things. And then I graduated from there, and they have a contract with Marquette called the 2+2 program, where basically all of your credits transfer over to Marquette.
Oh, nice.
Whereas some schools, not all your credits transfer. And so I was able to then transfer to Marquette for a 4-year degree in criminology and psychology. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start as a police officer, then become like an FBI agent and do like what like people do on like Bones and like all these TV shows, right? Or Clarice Starling does and with Hannibal Lecter. Like, I want to be the person who gets into people's heads. And so that was like the plan, FBI, or DEA. DEA would be fun too. And so I finished my 4-year degree at Marquette, all while juggling all these things. And I actually worked multiple jobs, not just one, you know, trying to make ends meet, things like that. And I did become a police officer and a 911 dispatcher for about 5 years. And if you go back to like even the 9/11 story, my goal was always helping people. Like, that was, I always wanted to help people and make a difference. And there were moments as an officer, it's a very reputable job. It's an amazing job. I loved that I did it. And as a 911 dispatcher, there were moments I really do feel like I did that. I helped people. I saved lives. I made a difference. A lot of the job, though, is writing reports.
I've heard this. It's like so much paperwork.
Writing tickets, sitting in a car. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It's not as much of making an impact on people's lives as I thought it was going to have. And so about 4 years in, I started having these doubts about the career.
Sure.
On top of the fact that I started having a lot of health problems.
Oh, okay.
Which at the time I didn't know was
Sure.
partially connected to the career, plus the trauma I've been through and things like that. And so I was like, something has to shift. I have to make a different decision. I ultimately got let go from my 911 dispatch job because of the health problems that were creeping into work performance stuff. And so I was just doing police work at that point, and my husband, who at the time was only my boyfriend, sat down with me and was like, "You're unhappy. What do you want to do? Like, where do you want to go from here?" And I was like, well, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a pop star. That's not going to happen. Like, I can't suddenly
Let's just revisit all the ideas I've had.
Can't suddenly become Britney Spears now, you know, like, it's not going to work. But aside from that, I always thought psychology was an option. I always thought veterinary science was an option, being a veterinarian, or being a lawyer. And then we kind of did the pros and cons checklist. You know, I felt like I was back in high school weighing out the pros and cons of everyone. But that's
this
what
is
I
so
needed.
important when you're going to make a decision. So that's
especially
good.
A big decision. And so I did, and I was like, okay, well, psychology, I think that's a good like second option. That's how I ended up. There's nothing really good or bad about it per se, but I felt like I could eventually get bored with it. Veterinary science, I decided I don't know that I could handle actually putting my hands inside an animal and like doing all the surgery stuff. So no. And then as a lawyer, I was like, I really do think this is something I could do. Like, I really feel like it's the way people can make the most impact. And there's so much potential with it. I could eventually become a legislature. I could become Congress. I could become a judge. I could run for president.
Yeah,
like,
avenues as an attorney.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah.
So I was like, but before I commit to the hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans, I'm going to go work in a law office. And so I started working for a lawyer who I will not name, but she was not the kindest person to work for. But working for her, I will forever be grateful for the experience.
Sure.
Because I very quickly learned that I could do the job.
That's awesome.
The reason why is because she literally threw you to the wolves. Like, you did her job for her.
Right.
She was always going on vacation. She was always gone. She was always doing her thing. And it was literally like, you did the drafting of the documents. You did everything. You figured it out. And she just reviewed it all.
Right.
And that was it. And
is this like a paralegal kind of position, or just like an administrative assistant? Or
so I was originally hired as just her like a personal assistant, kind of like I did everything from her grocery shopping to wrapping her Christmas presents to drafting legal documents to filling her car with gas. Like, it was a little extreme. But
very comprehensive.
I ultimately ended up doing a lot of like paralegal work.
Okay.
And I enjoyed all of that type of stuff. I was like, there's so many little nuances. One little fact can change things. It's really kind of cool. And I learned quickly that I could do it. And so I found a different law firm to work for that treated people much better. And I started working there, and then COVID hit. And I applied for law school, and it took 2 application processes, so 2 years to finally get in because they had reduced their numbers due to COVID. I was waitlisted. But I got into law school. And thankfully, because of COVID, I had demonstrated that I could work from home.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so they allowed me to continue working there throughout law school, which most people don't do.
No.
Most people just go to law school and don't work. But I have kids. I have to work. And so I worked nights and weekends at home. I would go into the office on Sundays to mail out anything that needed to be mailed out. I was the only person in the office. And I made it work. And then about halfway through my law school career, I got offered a different position at the firm that I'm at now, which is about 5 minutes from my home. And I was like, That's like awesome. Where I'm at, but being closer to home is much more appealing. Took that position, and within 3 months, they told me they wanted me to continue there when I became an attorney.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hard to argue with performance.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, that really is an important lesson.
Yeah.
For people. I mean, you know this because you've lived it, but, you know, there are a lot of things to blame when stuff isn't working out, but it's really hard to argue with effort and performance, you know. So that's a great path into that.
Yeah.
And still getting to help in your role, and you're still sort of on the periphery of that same kind of population, and not in the FBI, but you could be dealing with people who the FBI brought, you know, or whatever. It's still in that world, that sort of like thrill thing. Yeah. And still helping people. So. So just really quick, going back to like, I know we say like, and then I made it work, and you know, I had kids, and like, so I like went to school, and you know, I had a couple different jobs and stuff. So just for people who may be in those moments right now, what do you think, you know, allowed you to do that, or what did you tap into to do that, or how did you? And again, we don't ask ourselves this, because sometimes if we do, you know, it's like walking. If I start asking myself how my feet are working, I just fall down. So we don't always reflect on that. But is there something that you can cite now that your kids are older, that maybe you tapped into, or just what had you doing that, or what can people think or try to do?
Yeah. So I will say there's a couple different pieces that I think kind of got me to where I am. One was you know, I had a good role model in watching my mom, right? So she made it work no matter what.
Yes.
You know, making $6 an hour, raising 6 kids, she figured out a way to make it work. And she was never too proud. So whether that meant applying for low-income housing, or applying for state aid, or going to the food pantry, she figured out a way to make it work. And she never let her ego or her pride get in the way, because us kids, we came first.
Right.
And so that was important for me to see. And so I think that was kind of the basis, the foundation of my beliefs and my thought system.
Yeah, you had an example of somebody who did that.
Yeah.
With maybe fewer resources.
Yes.
So
yeah,
that's good to learn from that.
I think a second part of that then was when my daughter was born, I knew that I wanted to break the cycle. I knew that I didn't want to be that parent that said no because we couldn't afford something.
Gotcha.
And I was willing to make sacrifices for myself to make that happen. And now I'm not saying, you know, there weren't times that I said we have to wait, or we've got to save up, or, you know, it's going to be a few months or things like that. There have been plenty of times that I've been like, not right now. And that's a very real answer for a lot of people. But I never wanted to be the person who said, you can't go on that field trip because I can't pay for it, or you can't have that pair of shoes because we don't have the money, and we won't have the money. I never wanted that to happen, because it happened to me. And so she really changed and shifted my thinking, her coming along. And then I think the third thing, the thing that I kind of like tapped into within myself throughout this process was just this undenying like drive I have to never give up. Like, if you listen to my story, you would think that I've failed, and I have. Everybody does. But I choose not to look at it as failure per se, as in like ways that didn't work for me. And I've learned that I'm learning myself and figuring out myself better. And I would rather look back on my life and be like, I figured out 100 different ways that didn't work for me, but I'm happy now. Then I stayed in that one thing that didn't make me happy because it was comfortable and it was easy and I didn't want to fail. I'm not afraid to look stupid. I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to get messy or dirty and have to start over again.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for people who, I mean, you know, failure is what it is, but also it's not always failure, because we don't arrive here with some knowledge that then we mess up. It's, you're gaining that knowledge through those trial and error, through the experiences you've had as a child. You know, when you're little, things are imposed on you constantly, and you can choose some things, you know, but your free will as a child is limited by wherever you are, who your parents are, caregivers, where you go to school, the random people that are assigned to your school, you know, the decisions that your parents are making for you. And you do have a choice, and we always have a choice, except when you're little, you're not developed enough to make those choices, you know, in an educated way. And so this happens a lot with kids in sports too, you know, they feel like they failed, but it's like, hello, you just got here. Let's say you're 8 or 9. It's like, you just got here. You probably just in the last year realized like you're a separate person than everybody else. You know, cognitively, you're not developed enough. So all this stuff sort of knocks you around as a kid, and what you do with that as you grow up and become more aware, that's important.
Yes.
Even if you make a wrong choice, you can't always know that was wrong until you're moving through it.
Yeah.
So sometimes we project out and say, like, if I do this, then this. But there's too many variables involved for you to even have any real awareness of what those are.
Yeah.
It's like you just have a focus, and then all of this other stuff is going to try to knock you around while you're on your way there. And maybe it doesn't work out, but it doesn't mean it doesn't mean you were wrong about everything. It just means you didn't know some things. Now you know. And like, this is such a great example of that. And the perseverance, and also tying back to like your overachieving as a kid. Yeah. I mean, you really set yourself up for continue that, you know, as an adult. So
yeah. And I will say too that you know, I've done a lot of like inner work. Sure. I always joke that I'm like the most right-brained, left-brained attorney ever, because I have this very like hippie side of me that is very in tune with doing the inner work and the healing work, and you know, all of that sort of stuff, and healing your trauma, and everything is sourced back to an experience that we've had when we were younger or in a past lifetime and things like that. I could go on a whole different tangent about that, but the overachieving is not always a beneficial thing either. And that's one thing I've had to realize. Like, you know, it ultimately led to health concerns and diagnoses of mine and things like that, because I was not taking care of myself and I was overworking myself, overachieving. I learned at a very young age that in order to get someone to love you, you had to like be the perfect person and to earn it, and you have to do everything perfectly, and that's not healthy and that's not right. And so it took some healing and some growth and some processing to figure out that like it's okay to turn something in that's not perfect, and it's okay to like only have to something sometimes, or like leave the dishes in the sink at the end of the night and do them the next day, you know, that type of thing.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard if you're a person who wants to like, you know, when I was young, my dad was in the military. I say this a lot on the show, but he used to say that like his name was attached to our behavior. So, and on an Air Force base, you don't know everybody, but you could instantly know who somebody is. Yeah. It's very easy. Yeah. And so just at a young age, it was like, okay, now listen, did that always drive good behavior from me? No. But he would say, you know, what you're doing reflects my name. And so, so that you want to finish things, you want to make sure they're good. So I've always thought that, and even in jobs that I've had or you know, management positions or something like that, I always thought of that, like my team, if my name's going on this, like we got to get our stuff in order here, you know? And so when you talk about like, it's okay, like even I kind of had like just a visceral reaction to you saying that, even though I know that at this age now, you know, it's like you want to achieve. I always want to achieve. I always want it to be good. Yeah. I know that mistakes can be made, and we just talked about failure, and still the finished product I want to be like with a bow on it. Yeah. And so to leave the dishes, it's like, it's like a lesson. Yeah. Yeah.
And when I can tell at home when like my anxiety or my stress level is increasing because those behaviors start to increase. Yeah. Right. And it's like subconscious.
For sure.
You know, I'll literally get up off the couch,
Yes.
and before bed, it's like wipe the couch or wipe the counters down, wipe the stove down, put the dishes in the dishwasher, get the dishwasher started, wipe the table down, and I'm like, none of that had to be done.
Right.
You know, like
No.
I could have just went upstairs and went to bed.
Yes.
So it's like I can tell that I'm not dealing with my stress or dealing with my anxiety or whatever it is I have going on because all of these other behaviors are starting to increase.
Well, and I literally just did that before I came here today because I'm going out of town to see my sister. Listen, I live with 5 other people.
Yeah.
Okay. But what do you think the house looked like when I left? Like, I got up early today to do my things and then make sure everybody has their stuff and the laundry room, like everything is just in order there. And that is driven by, you know, anxiety of just not being there to do that over the next couple of days. And you can even be conscious of that. And I did dole out some things for them to do, but they're doing it in a clean, organized environment because that's tangible. That's something I can control. I can see an immediate result. And these bigger things that are going on, you can't see that result like right now. So you're right. It's like channel it into something productive that you can say like, okay, well, I did that, you know.
I've noticed too when I talk to other people and they do exactly that. I do that too. Like when I'm going out of town, even if my husband is staying home, things like that. And I realized with me, and maybe it's not the same for you, but with me, some of it comes from almost like a place of guilt. Like I'm leaving.
I want to earn my time away.
And so, and I want to make sure I feel bad that I'm leaving you. So I'm going to set you up and make sure it's clean and make sure you have nothing to be upset about while I'm gone because I'm leaving you and that type of thing. And so, I do think that
you're
plays
exactly right about that. I think
a factor in it too.
Yeah. Or have we done our duty?
Yes.
You know, and especially as moms, it's like, okay, I want to do X. That means I have to do all my other things I normally do and then make time and make sure everybody else has time. They don't have any obligations while I'm doing X.
Yeah.
Okay. It feels like a lot.
It does.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think family members, we teach them to expect that from us. But if we said, hey, and I have done this, like sometimes you're just like, it's enough already, you know? And it's like, hey, can you please do this? Like I cannot fit it in. But where do we have to get in our lives to really ask somebody to do that? You know, it's like, I'm so tired. I really have to be worn down to introduce the idea that somebody else could come and do.
Yeah. I think it's sad. I know for me, I had to basically like hit my like rock bottom in order to ask for help and get to that point where I felt comfortable being like, I need you to do this and I need you to step up and I can't do it all by myself anymore. And I think that's one of my like purposes in life is to show people that like you don't have to get to that place before you reach out. And you also aren't alone in the way you're feeling. Like everybody feels that way at some point, whether you're male or female, but I do think women feel that way a lot. We carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, the weight of the family. And men do in a different way. You know, they a lot of times feel more of like the financial, I have to take care of the family. And women, it's a lot of the like maternal, I have to take care of the family in that sense. And so I know for me, like I literally had to have multiple health diagnoses. I had to like let go from a job. I had to be at my lowest, like mentally, physically, emotionally, to finally be like, this is not how life needs to be. And I don't want other people to have to get to that point before they finally realize it, you know. So I love opportunities like this to talk about it or to just sit down with a woman one-on-one and talk about life and be like, how can you just take a few things off your plate or just realize that like you don't have to do it all yourself. Like it's okay to let the kids walk home from school one day a week instead of having to run 15 different places or whatever it is you need to do to lighten your load.
You kind of give them permission. And use that a little bit. So just circling back to how you do that now. So you realize you can't do it all anymore. And so how do you climb out of that? Or you will be an example of that if you tell us, you know, how you got to where you are.
I'm not perfect. There are days
No,
that I'm
of
still like,
course.
woo,
Yeah.
back down in the trenches. But I will say that for me, you know, and like I said, I had to hit my rock bottom before I climbed out. And it was literally step by step. I started, this sounds so cliche, but I started with self-help podcasts and books.
Yay, I love those.
You know, like there were books and whatnot that and actually one of the first and most influential books that I read during this point in my life was Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. It really just helped me realize that, like, it's not always about what you do. Like sometimes it's about what you don't do. And I think that was like a pivotal moment and a pivotal thought in my head, that sometimes when you don't do things for people and you let them figure it out themselves, or you let them do it themselves, you're actually helping them more than just doing it for them. And when I changed my mindset about that specific thing and I started saying, like, no, you can do that. You can figure out how to wash your own laundry. You can figure out how to load the dishwasher. You know, oh, you decided you wanted to go to this birthday party on Saturday that I had no idea about. You can figure out how to get home. You know, like things like just little things like that. And it's not being a bad mom.
Right.
It
feels bad.
It feels bad. It feels bad. But it's teaching kids to be responsible for their decisions and their actions and how to grow up properly. It helped me in the moment. I felt like crap, but it helped me then realize that sometimes in those moments you're helping them while helping yourself. Aside from like changing your thought process on things, like practical, tangible things that I did, obviously the podcasts, the books, I did enroll in therapy at that time. I don't think there's anything wrong with going to therapy. I think every single person on this planet needs therapy multiple times in their life.
I agree.
So
huge supporter of that.
Yeah. So I think that that's very important. And I had to learn that it is okay to ask for help. So I know for me, asking for help was scary because every time in my life that I've asked for help before, it got used against me. It would be one of those instances where it was like, I need help with this. And then they would keep tallies.
Sure.
And then it's like, well, you do this for me now because I helped you with that. And so I had to learn not only how to ask for help, and that it's not my responsibility when somebody comes back to me with that, but how to ask for help from the right people.
Yes.
There were people in my life that I was surrounding myself with that weren't beneficial to me, that were those tit for tat tally keepers. And cutting some of those out of my life at that same time was pivotal. It helped me feel better about myself.
Yeah, that's great. That's also hard to do.
Yeah,
for sure. Because we're comfortable in our discomfort, you know, because it's familiar.
Yeah.
And so there's some guilt there, and sometimes you really have to fight yourself to understand that you have worth, you know, and the people that are not contributing to that make that so much harder. And so when you can just, you know what, I heard this, speaking of podcasts, shoot, I'm not going to be able to credit who it was, but the quote was, they live a life that I don't prefer. And so it doesn't necessarily make them malicious or whatever. It's just, it doesn't go. And if another way they used it was like, you know, if people are saying negative things to you, and then you say, oh, well, they view that in a way that I do not prefer. And I've just been, it was like last week I heard that. I've been just thinking about that.
Yeah.
And that is true, because that can help you cut out the people that aren't. Did you just say, like, I'm not being rude or mean or whatever, if that's what hurts when you try to get rid of them. It's just like, you live in a way that I don't prefer, and it doesn't serve me. And, you know, so this doesn't serve you either.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah. And then you feel better.
Yes.
But you don't know you're going to feel better till that is done. Really.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's the tough part, is when you're in the midst of it and when you're going through it all, sometimes it feels worse than when you first kind of hit that rock bottom, right? Because there's so much shedding that happens, so much letting go, and you can often feel even more alone than you did in the beginning, right? But there is this light at the end of the tunnel, of this like beautiful thing if you just keep trudging through, just keep moving through it. I always think of like the story of the bison. So and the bison versus the buffalo. Buffalo will, if there's a storm coming, they turn away from it, or they try to go around it. Bison will turn around and walk through the storm to get through it faster. And so they're always headed to the storm. And in looking back on all those moments in my life, there are moments that I can pinpoint where I tried to go around the storm, or tried to avoid the storm, and it just lasted 10 times longer, got 10 times worse. The moments where I truly was just like, you know what, I'm gonna buckle down, I'm gonna get through this, I'm gonna face my storm, whatever it may be. It was done and over in a much quicker way, and the healing can then begin on the other side.
And we also often really make it the worst. It's gonna, mentally we're like, no. So we avoid, and sometimes it is really that bad, but most of the time we're just making it so much worse. And then you do it, and it's like, well, I mean, that sucked, but it wasn't what I thought.
I just had this conversation with my daughter. So she, short story about her, she just finished a 5-month internship down in Kentucky with Claiborne Farms, which is a horse breeding facility down there. Her dream job is to breed horses for the Kentucky Derby. Like, that is,
oh my goodness,
right? And to do so ethically, and like kind of change the racehorse world, show people that there's a right way to do it, and you can do it without hurting the horses, things like that. And so like that is her dream. And so she got this internship down there, absolutely loved it. She just came back to Wisconsin to graduate high school. And she, before she left for Kentucky, was working at Quick Trip and enjoyed her employees, but didn't enjoy the customer service aspect of the job. And so she had taken educational leave, and her manager texted her and said, hey, your educational leave is about up. When are you coming back to work? Wanting to know. And she built this whole story in her head around it. Like, how am I going to tell him that I don't want to come back? What am I going to do? And so I had to like help her formulate a response, and we did. And ultimately he just extended that educational leave. And I was like, you made this out to be way worse, because that's what we do. And then it needed to be. And so I think it was one of those perfect life lesson moments for you, that she avoided texting him for like 4 days. And I was like,
and she's in agony. And you know what he's doing? He's just like doing the schedule, running the store. He's never thought about it, just waiting to hear back from her.
So it was one of those moments, a life lesson for her, for sure.
That is so true. We do that. So head into the storm. I mean, you're coming out the other side so much quicker. I mean, you might be a little more banged up, who knows? But then you can go on with your next choice or your next step or whatever that might be. So what are you doing now?
What am I not doing now? So I'm at a big, personally, we'll start personally. I'm in kind of this transition phase. I'm getting a little emotional, and I wasn't expecting that. So me and my husband, I guess I would consider us kind of empty nesters, which is new. So as I said, we're a blended family. He has 2 children from a prior relationship, one by blood, and I say one by love. One is a stepchild of his that, have become part of our family. We're very, they're all our children. And then I have my daughter. They are all older. So my husband is 10 years older than me. So his son is 20. His birthday was yesterday. Please forgive me if I'm wrong. I think 26. His daughter is 22. And then my daughter is 18. So I don't.
You have so much time now.
I don't know about that. I feel like I'm still running everywhere for all of them. But it's like this different phase, like kind of this empty. There's this excitement, right? Because we get to like leave and go do whatever we want, and as long as we have somebody to babysit the dogs, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But there's also like this emptiness and kind of grief about like not being responsible for someone anymore. So there's that. Kind of going on personally. And so I'm sure there's plenty of women who can relate and maybe have some advice for me on how to deal with that, because I'm not sure how to deal with it, especially in my late 30s, you know, because I had kids so young.
Right.
That I have kids right now, or friends now that are just starting to have kids, and I'm done. So it's very different.
I had my first child when I was 32, so and I have 4.
So it's it's just different. You know, I have friends who have these little tiny babies or are pregnant right now, and I'm like, I'm done. And so I kind of feel this little bit of a disconnect between me and those friends. And then professionally, I'm an attorney, obviously, and I love my practice very much. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. And I also own a company called Made for More, which started as my passion project.
Yes.
That started in March of 2020, just coincidentally, right when the world shut down. And it started
Made for More, and I'm about to demonstrate.
And it started as a one-on-one coaching business, strictly for women on dealing with insecurities such as, you know, imposter syndrome or work-life balance, or just struggling with the feeling of not worthiness or not enoughness, things like that. Basically, I took my life experiences and my struggles and I put them into like a coaching method and was trying to help other women go through the same type of stuff I was dealing with. And then I realized, while I can impact people one-on-one and I enjoy that, I can make more of an impact by hosting events. And I really enjoy that. I like getting people together in community and bringing, you know, big groups of people together and like creating connection and just watching it happen, all the little sparks fly and the light bulbs come on. So in May of 2021, I decided I was going to host, well, before that, I decided I was going to host a conference, and I hosted it in May of 2021.
Okay. Could anybody come to it?
Yes. So actually at that point, I don't know if you remember, they had lifted like any sort of restrictions on the amount of people that could get together. They were still recommending like outdoor gatherings for big groups, things like that. But like if you're indoor, it was optional to wear a mask, things like that. And so that's how we presented it. Now, I made the decision at the time to limit the amount of people I had there just because I wanted to be safe. So I said 50 people in person, or no, 75 people in person. And we added a last minute online thing, which was literally just like $25 a ticket. And I like propped a camera on a thing and just left it there stationary. And like that was it, because and it started because I had a friend who wanted to come who was put on bed rest because she was pregnant. And so that was like, I was like, oh, well, if I'm going to live stream it for you, I might as well just, you know. We sold out. We sold out of the in-person tickets and then had an additional probably like 25 people buy virtual tickets. After that event, I decided I wanted to host it annually. And so every single year we've had one. 22 we had one, 23 we had one, 24 we had one. This year it was scheduled for the end of August, or beginning of August, sorry, end of July, beginning of August. But we postponed it to February of 26 because we're doing some restructuring. My husband has actually come onto the business with me.
Nice.
And we are kind of shifting into a semi-annual format. So the goal is to actually host 2 events every year. One event is really focused on that healing aspect, the, you know, conversations that are tough, the trauma-focused talk, the getting you through the mud. And the second event is more for the people who are asking the questions of like, okay, now what? Like, I've done the work. I'm kind of through all of that. but I feel lost or alone, or I don't really know where to go from here, and I don't know who my people are anymore, or I have this business idea, but I don't know where to go with it, like that type of thing. So originally, I tried to cram all of that information from both events into one, and it felt a little scattered. And I think there were two very distinct audiences attending. There were the people who were coming for the healing, and then the people who were coming for like the growth and the future thinking. And I just, after sitting down with my husband and talking about it, we were like, we think everyone will be served better by separating the two groups and really focusing on two different events and doing it that way. So I'm super excited for it, but it'll be a new format. And just a big transition. And I think it's just going to shift the way everything's kind of unfolded.
This is amazing. I actually have a life coaching business, and I'm just coming up with my 12-week program. Okay. And so it's similar to that, but it's not so much about healing. It's more about where am I now and where am I going?
Yeah.
And so this is interesting to hear you talk about that. And the conference piece too, I've always wanted to just have just an audience of women there where we can talk about even the things that we've talked about here.
Yeah.
And how are people getting through that? Yeah. And, I envision that just big gathering happening too. So it's encouraging to hear you say, you've done that and had success with that, and that's being done out there for women too. So
yeah.
So yay.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love it. It's my passion. It's my joy. And there's people from all walks of life that come. And, our motto with it is come as you are, and you will leave changed. Like, you will leave forever changed. It doesn't matter. I have people reach out to me that are like, I came there in the middle of my divorce and it shifted my way of thinking. There are people who are like, I came there after quitting my job. I came there after I retired. We have people who from age 16 to 75 that attend these events, and men are welcome too, although the audience is probably like 10% men, 90% women. There are some men who attend, and it's absolutely just beautiful to see the growth and the wide array of speakers that they just bring something different to the table, that show people that they're not alone in their journey.
Yeah.
And whether you're struggling with life decisions, or you have an illness, or you had an addiction, or you struggle with mental health, or whatever it is, that you can have these things in your past and still use them to help you and leverage you into your future.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so that is in February of next year.
Yeah. And
let's say somebody's watching this and they're interested in that.
Yeah. So there's information on my website. It's www.iammadefor more.co.
Okay.
So CO, not com. And all the events are listed on there. We host sound healing and breathwork events as well. We host online, virtual, like masterminds, mini minds, things like that. My goal with it is to just get resources out to people.
Yeah.
I know through my own journey, therapy helped me immensely. It really did. But there were also additional things that I needed that you couldn't find in the traditional health system or the traditional, medical system. And so we bring in people who have experience with a ton of different stuff so that you can just experience, maybe breathwork's not for you, but you've never tried it, so you don't know. Or maybe, you have no idea how sound frequency can be healing to your body. So give it a try and see if you like it. There's dietitians who come in, fitness coaches, somatic coaches, just people who have experience and knowledge to share, and like me, have a passion for helping people.
Yeah, this is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
This is awesome. Okay, so before we wrap up, anything we didn't touch on that you think could be valuable, for the people that are watching, parents or whoever happens to be there, just anything that we didn't touch on, sound advice or suggestions or.
Yeah. I think when I watch or listen to something like this, the thought that always crosses my mind is like, yeah, that's great for you, but you didn't live my life, or you don't know what I've been through, or, you had X, Y, and Z, and I don't have that. I'm a single mom, or whatever it is. And, what I always tell people is I may not be the perfect person to compare yourself to because our stories might not perfectly align, but I guarantee that there's at least one other person out there that you align with, because nobody is ever alone. I went through a time period in my life where I felt very, very alone, to the point that I wasn't sure I wanted to live to the next day. I recently had somebody very, very close to me make that decision, and I have made it a personal goal of mine to make sure that every person I come across knows that they're not alone. So I would tell anybody that's listening to this that are like, okay, yeah, that's great, but I'm no attorney. I'm just a stay-at-home mom, or I'm just a this, or I just work at McDonald's, or whatever. One, it's not just like every job has a purpose and every person has a purpose. And two, just because our paths aren't exactly the same doesn't mean we don't have feelings and emotions and other life experiences that could be similar, or you don't have, or there may be somebody else out there that does. So if you're feeling alone, or if you're struggling, reach out to someone, anyone, because there are people out there who align with you.
That's so important. And, if you sat and thought all day about all the reasons why it's hard, and why you might not want to do it the next day, you could come up with maybe a lot of reasons. But the challenge really is just, instead of that, to find one to stay. And you're right. When people watch and listen to this, they are not you. They are not me. They are having their own individual experience. And it's important. And just, if we can just circle back to your mom, since that's how the show opened. And I mean, she was 16, she had 6 kids, she was doing it on her own, she was working multiple jobs. And everything that she did, good, bad, the things imposed, all of the stuff she didn't ask for and that you didn't ask for, if she wouldn't have done that, you and I wouldn't be sitting here. So you sometimes can't see the light immediately, but it is there, and sometimes it just shines through somebody else that you helped become that. And so it's so important to show up and find that one reason. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for coming. And we put your website up too. So if people want to get hold of you, they can just go to your website.
Yes. Yeah. There's a contact me form on there. My email's on there. My phone number may even be on there. I don't know, but you're welcome to reach out any way you can find me.
And you're on socials too.
Yes.
You're kind of all over there. And so this was so nice. I'm glad this worked out.
Yeah.
You could make it.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So we've learned a lot from Sarah today and had an opportunity to step into her shoes. Hang on to your perspective, but don't be afraid to take on someone else's. You could learn something. Be resilient, show up. You need it, your kids need it, the world needs it. Continue to pursue your goals, to have goals, to come up with goals, and to not feel alone. There are 2 billion of us worldwide, and we are here for you. Thank you.